She slid the folder across the diner table like she'd rehearsed it 100 times. "One last signature," she said. "Then we're done. Really done. We'd been divorced for 14 months. I figured it was some final piece of paperwork the lawyers forgot. Insurance, maybe, or something about the house." I picked up the pen without even reading it. Then I looked down at the page. It wasn't divorce paperwork at all. It was a venue contract. For a wedding. Dated 6 months from now. My hands went cold before my brain caught up to what I was looking at, because at the bottom, where the couple's names were supposed to go, she'd already written mine. Before the story continues, subscribe to the channel if you enjoy emotional American romance stories like this one. My name is Mark Delaney, and for 11 years I was married to a woman named Claire, in a town called Pine Hollow, Vermont, the kind of place where the leaves turn so bright in October that tourists drive 3 hours just to look at them, and everybody at the hardware store knows your name whether you want them to or not. Claire and I met in college. We got married young, maybe too young, and for the first 6 years, it was good. Really good. Then work got busier for both of us. She was building a small architecture firm from nothing. I was managing the family construction business my dad left me. And somewhere in the busyness, we stopped talking. Not fighting. Just stopped talking, in the way that's almost worse, because at least fighting means you're still trying. The divorce wasn't ugly. That's the part people never believe when I tell this story. There was no affair, no big betrayal, nothing dramatic to point to. Just two people who loved each other and ran out of the kind of attention love needs to survive. We signed the papers on a Tuesday in March, both of us crying in the parking lot afterward, both of us agreeing it was probably for the best, neither of us really believing it. For the first few months after, I didn't see her at all. Pine Hollow's small, but not so small that you can't avoid someone if you try hard enough. I threw myself into work. She threw herself into the firm. We had a handful of logistical calls about the house, about splitting up what we owned, and that was it. Then, around month 8, I started seeing her around town more. At the grocery store, at the Saturday farmer's market. Once, at the hardware store, both of us reaching for the same brand of paint, because apparently 11 years of marriage teaches you exactly what shade of antique white a person likes on their trim. We started talking again. Nothing serious. Just catching up, the way you do with someone you used to know everything about, and now only know pieces of. She told me the firm had landed its first big commercial contract. I told her business was steady. We'd stand in the cereal aisle for 20 minutes some days, neither of us in a hurry to end the conversation, both of us pretending that wasn't strange. By month 10, those grocery store conversations had turned into actual coffee, once a week, at the same diner where we used to get pancakes on Sunday mornings back, when we were still married. Neither of us called it a date. We called it catching up. We kept calling it that for a long time, long after it had clearly become something else. I want to be honest about something, because this story only means anything if I am. There were a couple of weeks in there where I let myself get confused about what catching up meant, and I made an assumption that turned into the whole reason this story has a complicated middle instead of a simple one. Here's where the misunderstanding comes in. Around month 11, Claire started acting different. Distracted during our coffee, checking her phone more. Once, she left early, saying she had a meeting, which struck me as strange for a Sunday morning. I noticed she'd started dressing differently too. Nothing dramatic, just more put together than her usual work from the office in jeans style. I let my imagination run, the way people do when they're still in love with someone they're not supposed to be in love with anymore. I decided she was seeing someone. New relationship, early stage, didn't want to tell me because she didn't want to hurt me, or maybe didn't want to deal with my reaction. I told myself I was fine with it. I was not fine with it. I spent 2 weeks being quietly, stupidly miserable, convinced I'd waited too long to say the thing I'd been circling for months, that maybe those Sunday coffees had started to feel like something I wanted back permanently, not just something to be polite about. So I pulled back, canceled our Sunday coffee twice in a row with vague excuses. Claire noticed. She always noticed things about me, even after everything. And she asked what was going on. I lied and said work was busy. She didn't push, but I could tell she knew I was lying, and something in her face went careful in a way I recognized from the last year of our marriage, right before things got quiet between us the first time. It was my sister, Beth, who finally set me straight, the way sisters do. "You think Claire's seeing someone?" Beth said one night, not really asking. "You've been moping for 2 weeks. I don't know what she's doing. It's not my business anymore." Mark. Beth looked at me like I was being unusually dense, even for me. "She's not seeing anyone. She's been at the firm every night for 3 weeks straight. Ask literally anyone in this town before you spiral for another 2 weeks over nothing. I didn't believe her, not entirely, but I trusted her enough to actually pay attention instead of assuming. So the next Sunday, when Claire texted asking if I wanted coffee, first time she'd reached out first in weeks, I said yes. And this time, I actually asked instead of guessing. You've seemed distracted lately, I said, once we'd sat down. Distant. If something's going on, you can tell me. I know we're not. I know things are different now, but you can still tell me. Claire was quiet for a long moment, turning her coffee cup slowly on the table. I've been working on something, she finally said. Something I wasn't ready to tell you about, because I didn't know if it would even matter to you, and I didn't want to put you in a position where you felt obligated to say something you didn't mean. What kind of something? She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder, sliding it across the table the way you'd slide something fragile. I've spent the last year thinking about why we fell apart, she said. And it wasn't because we stopped loving each other. It was because we stopped choosing each other every day in all the small ways that actually matter. I don't think that's something either of us did wrong exactly. I think it's just something that happens if you're not careful. I didn't say anything. I didn't trust my voice yet. I've been renting the old carriage house behind the Whitfield property, she said, renovating it on nights and weekends for the last 4 months. I wanted it to be something real before I said anything, because I didn't want to ask you to consider something that was just a feeling. I wanted it to be a place, somewhere we could actually try again, slowly, without either of us assuming we already know how this ends. That explained the distraction, the late nights, the secrecy that I'd twisted into something so much worse than the truth. And this? I asked, my hand still resting on the folder. That's the venue contract for the Whitfield barn, she said. For a wedding 6 months from now. I know that's forward. I know we're not even back together yet. Technically, not really. And I know I'm doing this completely out of order. But I didn't want to keep circling around what I actually want, the way we used to circle around everything that mattered, until circling was the only thing we knew how to do together. She looked at me, steadier than I'd seen her look in over a year. I don't want a version of us that just avoids the hard conversations again, Mark. I want the version of us that has them, out loud, even when it's terrifying. So I'm asking you now, out loud, will you let me try this again with you? Properly. Slowly. All the way through. This time, no matter how uncomfortable it gets. Ending. I signed the venue contract that day, 6 months before I even officially asked her to marry me again, which tells you everything about how sure I already was, and how much time I'd wasted being sure quietly instead of loudly. We didn't rush it. That was the whole point. We dated again, slowly, the way we should have kept dating even after 11 years of marriage, choosing each other on purpose, every week, instead of assuming the choice had already been made once and would just hold on its own. We got remarried in October, in the Whitfield barn, surrounded by the same bright, stubborn Vermont leaves that had drawn tourists through town for as long as either of us could remember. Beth stood up during the toast and said, "These two got divorced, and then spent a year falling in love with each other all over again in a grocery store cereal aisle, which might be the most Pine Hollow love story that's ever happened in this town." Claire kept that venue contract, the original one, framed now in the hallway of the house we bought together. Not the house we used to own, but a new one, something that belonged to who we'd both become instead of who we used to be. I used to think love was something you found once, and either kept or lost for good. I know better now. Sometimes it's something you lose and grieve, and then, if you're lucky, if you're both brave enough to try again out loud instead of quietly, something you get to choose all over again, on purpose, for the rest of your life. If this story touched your heart, subscribe for more emotional American romance stories every week.